Saturday, everyone. What is going on? We are on the eve of Forbidden Door, and we have got a pretty big podcast to get into today, and we're pretty news heavy again on this one because there's lots of stuff to talk about in addition to predicting tomorrow's entire AEW Forbidden Door card live from London. So if you are here in the States, it's going to be 1 p.m. Eastern for you. If you live on the East Coast, if you're like me out in California or anywhere in the Western time zone, you're talking 10 a.m. in the morning is when this pay-per-view is going to air for us here in the U.S., but it is a stacked card, and it's a lot of matches that don't really have too much meaning in the grand scheme of AEW creative because Forbidden Door matches are usually just thrown together kind of last minute, not a lot of build, but a lot of times, especially I think last year, right, the card or the show itself has been phenomenal. So should be a fun afternoon of wrestling tomorrow, and we will be here later on to predict all of Forbidden Door. And we're also going to get into a lot of wrestling news as well. We've got to talk about the big news regarding WWE PLEs leaving Peacock early and jumping over to ESPN starting next month with Wrestlepalooza. So we're going to talk about that whole situation and how that all breaks down. We're also going to talk about the possibility of Chris Jericho returning to the WWE, also maybe Jim Ross to follow him, and Danhausen might have interest from the big company since he does have a couple of friends over there, namely Pepsi Phil. We could see our friend Danhausen in WWE one day. We've got Mercedes winning belt number 9, so she is Mercedes 9 belts, and I feel like 10 is the ultimate goal for her. We're also going to talk about the latest Vince McMahon spotting. We're going to run through last night's SmackDown, which was in Dublin, Ireland. Not a terribly good show, but that wasn't because of the crowd. The crowd was fantastic, and the John Cena promo on Logan Paul was phenomenal. It really makes you kind of bitter that they even turned John Cena heel to begin with and ruined 5 months of his final run, you know, after what we saw from him last night. And I'm like, man, I wish we had a little more time with him, but it's wrapping up. 10 dates left after last night. So we'll run through a little bit of SmackDown, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. Same with Dynamite. We're going to run through it because there was a couple of really good matches on there and a couple of news tidbits, but we're not going to spend a ton of time on Dynamite since Forbidden Door is tomorrow. But I definitely want to mention that really, really stupid angle that they did with MJF and Hangman that I did not like, with MJF kind of blackmailing Hangman Page. Those are the type of angles I just really don't love, and we've seen them a few times in WWE even, and I'm just not a fan. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about Will Ospreay, his potential injury, and we might be losing him for a year or more, which really sucks, but he is going to be competing tomorrow at Forbidden Door right in his hometown. And other than that, we'll get into whatever else you guys want to discuss this afternoon. Now, I should let you guys know what we have going on for the weekend. I will do that in just 1 second. I just want to make sure we're all pulled up and ready to rock here. Good. All right. We can be seen and heard. Correct. All right. We're good over there. Just want to make sure I've got everything ready to rock here. So here's what's going on for tomorrow. I'm sorry I didn't have these images already set. So for tomorrow, what we're going to do for Forbidden Door is, since it does air at 10 a.m. for me here on the West Coast, and I work nights, and I stay up all night, a little bit too early for me to be in front of the camera. I don't think you guys want to look at me at 10 o'clock in the morning. I just don't think you want that. So I'm going to watch the pay-per-view, and we're going to be up here to review it tomorrow afternoon, but we're going to do it a little bit after the show goes off the air. So tomorrow afternoon, we've got this set for 4 o'clock Eastern, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That's when we're going to be up here tomorrow night to review AEW Forbidden Door. So remember that for tomorrow. No watch along. We're going to be doing just a review instead, and I'm going to wait an hour or so after the show ends, just so I have time to catch up on what I might have missed, get myself something to eat and whatnot. We will come up here and review the entire thing. After that, since we're not doing a watch-along for Forbidden Door, I still wanted to give you guys a watch-along. So what we're going to do tomorrow night after the Forbidden Door review is that we are going to regroup about an hour later, and we're going to go live an hour later than we normally do for our Sunday watch-alongs. So tomorrow night after the Forbidden Door review, we're going to take a short break. And we're going to be back at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific to watch Clash of the Champions 24. This is the debut of Shockmaster. And I thought that would be a fun watch-along to give you guys, since we're not going to be able to do a full watch-along. This way we can still do something, that's classic wrestling related for Sunday night. So tomorrow night, after the Forbidden Door review, we will be here watching Clash of Champions, and we are going to watch the debut of the Shockmaster. I'm really, really looking forward to that. It should be fun. So keep that in mind. The links to both of these videos are up on the channel right now. So go over there, save them for tomorrow, and we will be ready to rock. Other than that, probably no Raw review on Monday, although I might still get one up. Raw on Monday is in, where are they at? I forgot where Raw is. They're overseas. Anyway, Raw is going to air. Oh, they're in Birmingham. Birmingham in the UK. And Raw is going to air at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. So a noon start time for me for Monday Night Raw. I'm going to wait and see how that show looks and what happens on the show, and to see if I'm going to bother reviewing it or not. So if we do review Monday Night Raw on Monday, it'll be later on in the day, I guess. I'm not really sure what time we will do that yet. I'm going to watch Raw, see how it is. If it's good enough to warrant a review, I'll post a link and we'll do one later on Monday, probably afternoon, since I think I'm going to take advantage of that and go out to dinner or something on Monday night, since there will be no Raw. So that's kind of what you can expect tomorrow and Monday on the channel as well. We are going to be changing up a few things on the podcast here for Saturdays. We're going to have 2 versions of the Saturday podcast starting in September. Basically, what's happening is I'm going to be taking Saturday nights off because I want a little bit more time on Saturday to do these podcasts. I want them to be a little bit more interactive, and I want you guys to help decide which topics we discuss, and I want you guys to be able to ask questions and that type of thing. So that's going to be the plan moving into the fall. So there are going to be occasions where I won't be available on Saturday night, like I'm going to have to work on Saturday. But for the most part, I'm going to be off on Saturdays. So what we're going to start doing for the podcast is we're going to start doing Saturday nights Greg events every Saturday, or most Saturdays at least. And we're going to book these a little bit later in the evening, maybe around the time Collision starts. I really hope they move, that AEW moves Collision off of Saturdays at some point. But we might do this at first head-to-head with them, at least for maybe an hour. I'm not sure yet how we're going to structure it. But those podcasts are going to allow us to have a lot more time to talk about a lot more stuff, and I want to be very much interactive with you guys in the chat. On weeks when I do have to work, we're going to come up here at regular time, 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, and this will be the Wingy. So Wingy during the day, Saturday nights, Greg events at night. That will start this fall, and the first live streaming of Saturday night's Greg event will happen 2 weeks from today, which happens to be my 48th birthday, 2 weeks from today. So that's going to be our first Saturday night's Greg event. I'm going to be putting up posts weekly over on YouTube to allow the members first to choose some of the topics we discuss, and then after that, I'll let everybody else join in and choose some stuff as well. Also, the night of the streams and the chat, all the super chats and questions, things like that we will get into, and we're going to try to make these a little bit more fun on Saturdays, because I really hate rushing them and trying to get these done in just 2 hours, especially if there's a ton of stuff to talk about. So looking forward to that this fall. Just keep that in mind. It's going to be really fun, and we're going to have a new background behind us. The debut of this in 2 weeks, like I said, we'll still be in this house, but about 2 weeks after that, I'm going to be out of here in a new, different YouTube studio space, and I'm already working on how that's going to look. So big things are coming. And also, starting this fall, what I really want to start doing is kind of getting back into, doing classic reviews and whatnot. Just the redundant nature of covering, weekly WWE TV, Raws and SmackDowns and Dynamites. One thing that we're going to do on the podcast too in the future, and today as well, is that I'm not going to spend a ton of time covering the results of these shows if nothing happens on them. SmackDown has been a big pile of nothing lately. Dynamite has been good, but not great. Raw has been pretty solid. But whenever we hit one of these podcasts and we've got some wrestling, we've got a Dynamite or a SmackDown to talk about, if nothing special happens on the show, we're not going to dedicate any time to it. We might run through it quickly, but we're not going to elaborate, because there's really no reason to. And I think that doing that might help me find more time to kind of give you guys more classic reviews. I need to get back into, well, I never really stopped, but to kind of expand the content creation, do some more stuff. I got like a lot of reactions lined up, YouTube shorts, a lot of stuff that I want to do and find time to do. And I think this fall I'll have a lot more time to get that done. So we're going to start doing classic reviews again and things like that. So once I get an idea when I want to start that, we can start selecting shows, nominating shows, and figuring out a way to allow you guys to kind of pick what we do. And of course, channel members are always going to get first dibs and first crack at that kind of stuff. So just keep that in mind over the next few months between now and the end of 2025 and the end of John Cena's run. You're going to see some changes on this channel, and it's going to be for the better. And thank you all for your awesome support as always. And yeah, I'll expand on more of my plans later. I also got Patreon plans and whatnot, and merch plans. I got to update the merch and all that I'm kind of working on, in addition to me working my busy season right now at work and planning a relocation next month. So things are busy in Gregland, but that ain't slowing us down. Good mic work is always here for you guys. So welcome to your Saturday Wingy for August 23rd, 2025. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Bray Wyatt's death, I believe. Rest in peace to Bray. 2-year anniversary, I believe. Let me do some quick shout-outs here, and then let's jump into our wrestling news, because we got a bunch. Good to see Melissa and Stephen Harris, William Cullen, We Are Pro Wrestling stopping in on Saturday. Good to see you, man. Join us tomorrow for that Shockmaster debut. That's going to be fun stuff. Red Raven Rucker is here. We got Zane G. We got Double UK. Love from the UK. Right on, man. Thank you for being here. David Brown is here as well. Matos 1489. We got Gilbert, we got Mike Rouse, Ryan Adams, good to see you, bro. Rodrigo is here as well. We've got Denny Downbad, we got Danny, Sonic Plays, Ben Espinoza, Ricky Zalvadar is here. We've got Ian Dunn. Amato is in the house. Got to head to a birthday party, so I'm going to be here for a bit. All right. Have fun at the party, man. Have a cold one for me, because I got to go to work and get my ass handed to me. So you and I are having different experiences today, Amato. I'm very glad that you are off having a good time. Spartan Sprinkles is up here in the house as well. Who else we got? Michael Cuomo, good to see you. Colin Wright is here. Isaac, Adrian Grant, Joe Brill. Lost my place anyway. All y'all chiming in, saying hello. Thank you. What's up? Happy Saturday to you. Do me a favor if you don't mind. Smash that thumbs up button for me. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. Super chats are open, as well as memberships and whatnot, and all the information you need on all that jazz is down in the description below. All right, well, we got to start with what you see right here on the screen. Wrestlepalooza. It has now been official that, oh my God, there is so much kind of, I know everybody says this these days, but there is really a lot to unpack here, because in one day we had about like 4 newsworthy stories kind of all wrapped into one here regarding this Wrestlepalooza. Now, we already knew that WWE was planning a counter-programming measure against AEW to run head-to-head with AEW All Out on September 20th. We already knew that was the case. Once we saw Brock Lesnar return at SummerSlam and then Cena book his match with Logan Paul for Paris, felt pretty likely that Brock and John Cena was going to be the main event match for this PLE, whatever it might be. Then there was some more rumors about what the pay-per-view might be named, and Wrestlepalooza was talked about. I guess this did get leaked that it was going to be called Wrestlepalooza. Somebody else did own a trademark to this, which WWE has rectified. This was an old ECW pay-per-view name as well, way back in the day. Wrestlepalooza, I don't know. When you look at the logo here, it's like a buzzsaw. Nothing about the logo says Palooza to me. Look, it's like a buzzsaw. It should be like a party, like fans jumping up in the air or something like that. If you're thinking like a Palooza, this looks like a buzzsaw ready to cut a bitch. So I don't know what they're thinking with the logo or whatnot, but I don't hate it. But the name it just gives off great balls of fire vibes, like Wrestlepalooza. And I joked about this a couple of weeks ago. I said, when John Cena and Brock Lesnar are ultimately in the ring together cutting their promo, and to hear John Cena say, this Sunday at Wrestlepalooza, it's just not going to sound right, So anyway, the pay-per-view is called Wrestlepalooza. WWE announced that That will be the name of the pay-per-view that is airing on September 20th, and it's going to be in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's going to air at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, which will be head-to-head with All Out unless Tony Khan changes the time on that, which he still might. And, of course, this is likely going to be headlined by Brock Lesnar versus John Cena. Now, another really, really big tidbit about this announcement is that this will be the beginning of WWE's PLE agreement with ESPN. Now, they had already announced that WWE in 2026 is going to be moving over to ESPN's big new DTC app, which has launched on the 21st. I'm going to talk about my scenario with that in just a second. But that has launched. If any of you have signed up for that already, let me know how it is. Does it have a name or is it just called ESPN? How are you liking it? Have any of you signed up or at least got it with your cable provider or whatever the hell it is? How you liking it so far? And just give me some info about it because I'm going to need it by September 20th. And I'll probably sign up for it sooner rather than later, to be honest. So they are going to be essentially WWE leaving Peacock early. This was supposed to kick in at the end of the year or the beginning of 2026 when the Peacock deal ended. But now this Wrestlepalooza event is going to air on ESPN exclusively, and every PLE from there on out, will be airing there as well, which means Clash in Paris will be the final WWE main roster PLE on Peacock. So it's starting to get a little bit confusing here because the WWE Peacock deal still is intact. As a matter of fact, they extended the deal to add some more shows with Peacock, and there's still no word on the library yet. So, number one, we knew WWE was going to do a PLE up against All Out. Then we got confirmation on that and the name of the pay-per-view, Wrestlepalooza. Now we've got confirmation that the pay-per-view is going to air, or the PLE is going to air on ESPN on the new app that's going to hold all WWE PLEs, for the next several years in the new rights agreement that they just signed with ESPN. So that has a lot of questions. How did this happen? How did they get out of Peacock early? What's going on there? So here's a couple of reports that I'll share with you. One from The Hollywood Reporter, which really breaks all this down, and then a little bit of an elaboration from Fightful Select. So here's what The Hollywood Reporter had to say about this on Wednesday, and I quote, ESPN is moving up its rights takeover date for WWE's PLEs from 2026 to September 20th, 2025, beginning with a whole new PLE called Wrestlepalooza. Peacock, which had to give the okay for this to happen, will live stream its last PLE later this month. ESPN did not buy out Peacock's remaining rights. Instead, the arrangement for WWE's PLEs to exit Peacock was brokered between WWE and Peacock and then brought to ESPN, owned by Disney. The feeling was that through splitting its top two PLEs, WrestleMania and SummerSlam, into 2 nights apiece, WWE actually fulfilled its Peacock PLE tally early. WWE and Peacock worked out a deal to include new main roster programming to stream on Peacock. In the multi-year deal, Peacock gets 4 primetime Saturday night's main events per year. 2 will take place in 2025, one on November 1st and the other on December 13th, and the latter will feature John Cena's retirement match. The WWE Network library will remain available on Peacock through the end of 2025, and NXT's PLEs will stream on Peacock until March 2026. No word on what will happen with the robust WWE archives next year, but throughout the duration of the new multi-year partnership, SmackDown's library will stay on Peacock. So the classic pay-per-view library is going to go, but through the duration of this Saturday night's main event and NXT and main event deal they have with Peacock, the SmackDown library will remain over there as well. That's what they're saying here. So the first thing that I take away from that is that, Peacock is kind of getting screwed here a little bit because, they're losing all this stuff, but they're still maintaining their relationship with WWE. And one of the big changes coming out of this is that all of the future Saturday night's main events will not be airing on NBC. They're going to be exclusively streaming on Peacock, which means John Cena's final match will not be in front of a national televised audience. That might be a good thing because that might really limit the amount of ads we get. I'd hate to see 4 commercial breaks in the middle of the last time we're ever going to see John Cena. So maybe streaming on Peacock kind of takes that away. with the Saturday night's main events moving to Peacock, none of the PLEs have ads. So it might be a better viewing experience than actually being on NBC, but that is something that is a little bit of a bummer. And also, we don't know where that library is going to end up yet, although being right here on YouTube is a very big possibility. Here's what Fightful Select had to say about this. And I quote, "Last week, WWE sources told us that the WWE library was expected to be migrated to YouTube, but with this new deal, those same sources said they believe there's a good chance it could remain on Peacock for a while." So yeah, since WWE just struck this new deal with Peacock, they might just keep the library over there, which is fine as long as it's accessible. It's all I really give a shit about at this point. Goes on to say that they're working for additional details on that. Those that we spoke to in WWE say that a part of WWE's approach is to have content on as many platforms as possible to grab fans from each of those platforms. How times have changed in just a mere 10 years. 10 years ago, everything in one spot, WWE Network, $9.99, everybody's happy. Now they got their shit spread everywhere, and it's crazy. The final tidbit here from Fightful Select says that it was important to note that ESPN had stressed that many traditional cable services would be able to bundle ESPN's DTC service with their cable subscription. There will be a number of services that are left out on this and is being used to help push Hulu and traditional cable services. Right now, YouTube TV is not included, but ESPN sources tell us they believe that they are optimistic that a deal will be reached by WrestleMania. So the PLEs are now off of Peacock after Clash of Paris. They are moving to the ESPN app starting on September 20th. Saturday night's main event will remain with NBC, but off of NBC and streaming exclusively on Peacock. Peacock will also get the NXT PLEs, and they're going to get main event, which I don't know if anybody watches main event. So that's what's happening there. Also, AEW has now removed, or ESPN has now removed all coverage of AEW. So their partnership with WWE is going to be exclusive, and they're not going to be covering or mentioning or talking about AEW ever again, which I'm sure WWE just loves that. So that's a lot to kind of digest. That's some big information. We were expecting the new ESPN thing to happen next year, but now it's happening early next month for Wrestlepalooza. So I know everybody has got their own situations when it comes to how they're managing this and all these different streaming apps and whatnot. I've said before that I have DirecTV Stream for my cable channels, and it's not DirecTV, it's just a streaming app. And it's possible, I did not see this new ESPN thing being available as an add-on with my current streaming app for cable. But it's also an app I don't use, and I've talked about this before. And last night I was doing a lot of number crunching because, if I sign up for, DirecTV Stream, Sling, YouTube TV, you can start bundling a lot of those other apps, your Netflixes, your Apple TVs, whatever, for, cheaper prices and stuff. So that's one option. I'm paying for all of these apps individually. I've got Netflix and Peacock and Max and Apple all being individually paid. I don't have anything bundled at all. And I also pay for this, $80 a month, basically cable streaming service that I never use. The only reason I would really need it is if I'm home on Friday nights for SmackDown, which I'm never going to be. So, other than that, it's just watching Big Bang Theory and fucking ridiculousness. There's nothing on there for me. So what I think I'm going to do in the next couple of weeks is, last night I was thinking about keeping it and then bundling some stuff. And, it doesn't look like the new ESPN, the $29.99 ESPN thing is offered through my DirecTV Stream. If any of you have DirecTV Stream and it is offered, let me know. Somebody sent me a DM that they thought it was, but I couldn't access it. Doesn't look like I can get it through that, because some cable providers, you're going to be given access to the ESPN app without having to pay for it. It looks like I'm going to have to pay for it from where I'm sitting. But since I don't use my cable anyway, I'm going to drop it. I'm going to drop $80 a month, and I'm going to gain $30 for ESPN. So really, I'm saving $50 a month. I've been looking for an excuse to drop my cable. I do not need it. If I ever am home on a Saturday night, on a Friday night, then I'll illegal stream SmackDown, or I'll find some other way to watch it. I might also switch to YouTube TV in the future if YouTube TV does incorporate the new ESPN app. The only problem with YouTube TV is that for me on the West Coast, it wouldn't air SmackDown live. I had the same problem with Raw when it aired on the USA Network. I couldn't use USA TV or YouTube TV because Raw wouldn't air on the USA Network until 8 p.m. local time, so I'd have to wait. And the same goes for SmackDown, but SmackDown I can make arrangements for. So I think I'm going to drop DirecTV Stream completely, sign up for the ESPN app, and then once YouTube TV gets, a deal works out with them, I'll probably dump the ESPN app, get YouTube TV, and add the ESPN app through that. That's what I think I'm going to do, because it just, no matter which way I kind of crunch the numbers, I feel like just dumping my cable altogether, because I just pay it to pay it. I don't utilize it. I don't DVR nothing. I don't watch any shows on it. Everything I watch is just streaming. So basically, I'm paying $80 a month for cable that I don't use. Sometimes I have it on for background noise. Fucking Big Bang Theory. Not even paying attention to it. So what do I need that for? So for my personal situation, this isn't that bad for me. And in the long run, I'm actually going to wind up saving a few bucks with all of this streaming, with what my plan is. And I know everybody's got a different plan. And the older I get, the more confusing this is going to be. It's already confusing as hell for me. In WWE, you would think that spreading out their shit all over hell wouldn't be good strategy, but it is, because you can get separate media rights deals for all of these streaming platforms and really get your stuff out there on every platform. Every platform is going to have some sort of WWE content on it, and that's just fucking crazy. AEW's got Max. I think AEW needs to try to get on Apple TV or something. Try to balance this out, because WWE's got Netflix, Peacock, now ESPN, probably, somewhere else, YouTube as well for the library or whatnot. So I think AEW should try to get a second home as well. Maybe get a Max and an Apple TV deal or something. I've never had Hulu. Apparently Hulu's going away. I don't even know what Hulu is. I guess you can just watch shows and shit on there. I guess that's going to be incorporated into Disney, but I don't have any use for Disney. I looked on the ESPN app today and I saw that you could bundle the new ESPN app, $29.99, with Disney and Hulu. Hulu I might have some use for, but I don't have any use for Disney. What the fuck am I going to watch? Snow White? Fuck that. So it's a mess, and it's wild. So anyway, next month begins the new WWE media right or PLE rights deal with ESPN, and we'll see how everything shakes out after that going forward in terms of the library and all of that. So sound off what you guys have in the chat. And I'm also curious, like, once I sign up for this ESPN thing, what kind of football games am I going to get with that? Do I get a lot of NFL? Is it just Monday Night Football and that's it? Or is there some sort of like NFL package involved in that? Or is that going to be a whole separate thing if I want to watch games? Because if I'm going to cut the cord on cable, I'm not going to have CBS and well, I guess NBC. The Sunday Night Football games on NBC, do they also air on Peacock? So I guess I'd be covered there. But with like CBS, they air football games, and Fox, right, airs football games, NFL games. So I guess I wouldn't be able to watch those, but you know what? I kind of rarely do anyway these days. So I think I'm going to be all right. Maybe I'll wait till the end of the year, then I'll cancel cable just so I can have some NFL options for the year. Maybe I'll do that, but that looks to be the way I'm doing it. Okay, reading some of your situations there. Yeah, everybody's kind of has a different way they can bundle or combine or do stuff. It's such a weird world we're living in. I don't know if I like this more or less than back in the day, just regular with standard cable and pay-per-view. This does give you a lot of options, but it's almost like too many options, so much. It's so much. So anyway, we'll be keeping an eye on that whole situation, and we'll see how the first PLE on ESPN goes. If it all goes smoothly, and it's going to be a happy and prosperous relationship between the two. Let's talk about this other big story, although I wouldn't call it quite a story yet, because right now I think it's just rumors and speculation. But there has been some talk about Chris Jericho heading back to the WWE. He is apparently in his contract year here, and his contract is up at the end of the year. Now, I read a little bit from Fightful Select and from some various outlets, and most are saying the same thing, that there has been no news of Jericho's name coming up in WWE internally, and it's way too early to tell yet if this is a possibility. And we don't even know the status of his contract. Apparently it is up at the end of this year, but we don't know if it's been frozen due to him not working or if it's ticking. So if his contract, if they're going to do a deal where they're adding time to it or whatever, I don't know. But I feel like with someone like Jericho, and as crucial and as important as he was to the beginning of AEW, I think Jericho's always, even though he's not totally my favorite person, he's always done pretty good about maintaining good relationships with his employers or his former employers, like even gone from WWE, even when he was the AEW champion and the demo god and got his bubbly, was right up there. His relationship with WWE was fine. Tony Khan let him go on Broken Skull Sessions. When John Cena had his 20th anniversary or whatever, Jericho was one of the people that filmed a little video for him. And he's always maintained, he's never burned bridges. He's the literal opposite of CM Punk in that regard. And so if his contract is legitimately up, there would be no real reason for Tony Khan to add time, to that, not for all that Jericho did. And ever since the very beginning of AEW, ever since Jericho was there, and champion even, I always envisioned that, there would probably be a day when he goes back to WWE and accepts his Hall of Fame induction and goes back for one final goodbye. But then the more and more he was involved in AEW behind the scenes, I started thinking that maybe he was going to become AEW's Triple H and work side by side with Tony, but then that kind of faded away with everything else going on there. And now I think Jericho is just wrapping up his time there. There's really no reason for him to ever be back there as a main on-screen character. I really disliked most of everything Jericho did for the final 2 years that he was there. I did not need him on TV, didn't want him on TV. He was a waste of space and did nothing for me as a wrestling fan at that point. Early on, I thought he was a big asset to AEW. Having a name like that be your first champion, and be there as a well-established world champion, WrestleMania main eventer type of star that AEW would need to start getting that ball rolling. He was really, really important to them. And I think Tony Khan will always appreciate that. And if I'm Tony Khan, this is one situation where I'm not going to try to have any bad blood here. Chris, yes, thank you for all you did for us. I don't like WWE. I don't like those assholes, but I understand, why you would want to go back there. It was a big part of your career, was spent there, and, they're going to immortalize you in the Hall of Fame, and it's all about kind of your legacy. And I can understand that from Chris's perspective. So that's what I'm hoping that, Tony Khan, that's the attitude he will have. Like if he's faced with the decision, if I wanted to, I could add more time to Jericho's contract. I kind of hope that he doesn't. Now, with Jericho, I don't necessarily want him back in WWE. I don't think Jericho would be any better in WWE than he would be in AEW in terms of any sort of in-ring story. And I don't really want to see him in the ring doing anything significant. If he did come back to WWE, I would be most interested in him being either like an on-screen character of some kind where we see him relatively routinely, or be there to go into the Hall of Fame. Other than that, if he wants to have like a final run or a send-off, Jericho, he's in his 50s with a dad bod. He ain't who he used to be physically. I think if he did come back, his run doesn't need to be any longer than the run they gave to Kurt Angle when he showed back up and they made him retire. How many months was he occasionally getting in the ring? Like 4-ish? He just had a couple of matches, lost to Baron Corbin. So Jericho coming out as a surprise in the Royal Rumble would be perfect. And you can give him a WrestleMania match. I think it needs to be a retirement match. I don't think Jericho needs to try to hang on and have too many matches. I wouldn't want that. I don't think WWE wants that. WWE and AEW's roster both are filled with very, very talented wrestlers that Chris Jericho should not be taking time away from. But he still is a legend who deserves some time to say goodbye. So give him a little run, a small program with someone, work a WrestleMania match. You can win or lose, whatever, and have him go out like Angle or Batista did at WrestleMania and combine that with a Hall of Fame induction. I would love that for this year's WrestleMania or next year's WrestleMania in Vegas, for Jericho to have a combination final match Hall of Fame induction. Hall of Fame induction the night before, final match the night after at WrestleMania or whatever, however they do it now. That would be terrific. But maybe they want to get some more time out of Chris. They don't want to just bring him back in January and then retire him in April. Maybe they want to have him there a little bit. So I've always believed that Jericho coming back to WWE was a very, very, very real possibility. And I'm not going to have too much of a problem with it because it's what I would expect. But I would be really surprised if WWE wants to put him in the ring a lot. You know, he's just not that good anymore. He still can be physical and do some things. You know, he's still Chris Jericho, but he's an old Chris Jericho, and times are just different now. So Jericho coming back to the company, I could see him, you know, bringing that pod. You know, everybody's got a podcast. Cody's got one. Undertaker's got one. Stephanie's got one. You could have the Jericho podcast on there. I could totally see WWE taking over that fucking cruise. I went on the Jericho cruise back in 2020, and it was so fun. Had a blast. Met a bunch of people, made some new friends, hung out with Solomonster and all sorts of people. It was fucking great. Had a blast. Super fun experience. And I would recommend anybody go and do it because it was a lot of fun. But if WWE gets their hands on this fucking thing, they are going to tape an episode of fucking TNA on it. They're going to quadruple the prices. And then they're going to offer you meet and greet packages that start at $3,000 and go up from there. Where I got the entire trip for me and Elizabeth, I think it was like something like $2,000 or something for us to go. You know, and that was a lot of, all that was just inclusive, you know, and you could spend a little bit more money outside of there. But in terms of just the cost that it costs to go, the plane ticket, the cruise ticket, and all the amenities and stuff, it was like $2,000. You know, that's going to be a lot more. There's talk of $70,000 WrestleMania tickets right now for front row facing the hard cam. $70,000. You can buy an Audi for that. What the fuck? So if WWE gets their hands on that cruise and they WWEize it, it's going to suck. I'll never go. That's for fucking sure. And it'll be inflated prices and it'll be absolutely nuts. Jericho coming back to the WWE too would be interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, you already got some AEW guys there, namely Cody Rhodes, who really helped build the early part of AEW with him when I was on that Jericho cruise. As a matter of fact, on one of my second channels, I think it's the Bald Guy Wrestling channel, I've got some clips of that cruise up there. And I think one of them is Cody's speech on the final night. Cody wrestled, I forgot who Cody wrestled. I think he wrestled Joey Janela or something on the final night. And after the match, Cody had cut this big promo. He brought Tony Khan in the ring, and he talked about the importance of Tony Khan and how hard he worked to get a TV deal. And he really put over Chris Jericho. He said, without Chris Jericho, AEW would not be in the position it is. And I feel like Cody and Jericho were two of those early foundations, you know, of AEW. And to see them both in WWE now would be really interesting. It would just be really interesting. Hey, what's up, Cody? Hey, Chris. You know, just we're over here now. Isn't that weird? Yeah, it's really weird. I also would love to see the very first backstage interaction between Chris Jericho and CM Punk. And I hope that they film that and show it next season on WWE Unreal, on the docuseries, because they don't get along either. They never really did, even before AEW. I think they were always cordial and professional, but there's definitely some animosity between Jericho and Punk there. And then after the Brawl Out stuff, you know, Jericho was not happy with the way that whole thing went down. So if Jericho was to now come back into WWE and him and Punk are there, you know, they just don't really like each other. They're cut from different cloths, you know. Even before Punk came back to AEW, or Punk returned to wrestling and joined AEW, Punk did some sort of an interview where he kind of threw shade at Jericho. He's like, yeah, I got calls from people wanting me to do their podcast, but it was, you know, I didn't trust that they were just trying to get views for their own podcast. He immediately thought it had selfish ulterior motives, you know, was his feeling on that. But then when Punk got to AEW, they were kind of getting along. I think they even sat in a commentary booth together during a Rampage or a Dynamite or something a couple of times when Jericho was on commentary. So they were getting along just fine then, but then when the shit hit the fan there, it kind of, you know, divided them again. So Jericho and Punk, I feel like, would have some fences to mend if Jericho comes back to WWE. And I'll tell you, some sort of backstage shoot fight between the two of them, I'd love to see who'd win that, you know, because Jericho's a tough guy. You know, Jericho took out Goldberg, and Punk is, you know, he's sort of trained professionally to fight, but I'm not sure how many people Punk could beat up in a fight. So that whole thing is interesting. And, you know, it's kind of a curious question too. Who do you guys think? Who do you think has the bigger overall career? Chris Jericho or CM Punk? There was a big debate with Ibu and the self-made guys or whatever the other night that was like trending on Twitter. Big debate between Ibu and some other loud, obnoxious guy where they're debating the legacies of CM Punk and Kenny Omega. And I'm like, oh, that's a pretty good debate. I think I'm going to give the edge to Punk on that, but like not by much. Jericho and Punk, though, is a little more interesting. I think Jericho might get the nod because he took less time away, but he did spend, multiple years away from the business throughout different times where Punk's was all at once. All Punk had this 8 years all at once. Jericho probably had 5 or 6 years spread out over his entire length of his career. So like overall, who do you think has the bigger, who's going to leave behind the bigger legacy in pro wrestling? Chris Jericho or CM Punk? I think that's a really good debate. I think you can make arguments for both. So maybe we'll unpack that one day in a future video. So we'll see about Chris Jericho and if he goes back to WWE. But, sometimes you can just get feelings about things. And this is these rumors are rumors that I could actually see happening. I think it would be great if Jericho turned up tomorrow at Forbidden Door and helped MJF win the title or something like that, just to kind of throw people off. Remember, like SummerSlam 95 a couple of weeks ago, Luger had 1 foot in WCW already, and he still made an appearance at SummerSlam before debuting on Nitro. So maybe it's a situation like that where they bring Jericho in just to kind of cool off the rumors. But, Jericho heading back to WWE, seems like a likelihood. And by the way, this whole Jericho chatter was started because there was an Instagram post by someone who mentioned Jericho going back to WWE, and Jericho liked the post. So that's all it took, was Jericho liking that post, and then everybody started freaking out and talking about Jericho going back to WWE, and I definitely think it could happen. Another possibility that doesn't really have a whole lot of traction behind it yet, but I did see it today, and that is Jim Ross. Jim Ross may be joining Chris Jericho, returning to WWE as well. Now, he is going to be calling Forbidden Door, or at least part of Forbidden Door. He'll probably be on the call for a match, maybe 2 tomorrow. But the rumblings of Ross finishing up with AEW, they're coming from that Chris Featherstone guy who's already been, his credibility's been, a little suspect there. So take it for what it's worth. It's just a rumor at this point, and there was even talk about Jim Ross's contract being up after this month. But again, no, I haven't seen any confirmation from anybody in the wrestling media landscape that I trust talking about this. So take this with a grain of salt for now. But Jim Ross, if he is going to be, if his contract is finishing up with AEW, he's another guy that I could completely see personally wanting to finish up his career in WWE. Jim Ross has had a lot of health problems. He's battling cancer. Jim Ross ain't going to be with us for 20 more years, guys, and he'll tell you that. So, when you want to talk about like legacy and whatnot, would you rather die under WWE's umbrella or AEW's umbrella? And if you're Jim Ross, I feel like finishing up under WWE, where you really had a lot of your success. Granted, he had a lot of success at Mid-South and WCW, and he's the most recognizable play-by-play voice in pro wrestling history because of his track record and all the places he's been. But finishing up in WWE, I could see that being very attractive to Jim Ross as well. Now, he's already been inducted in the Hall of Fame, so you can't really do that. But having him finish up there, maybe call one final WrestleMania match, because I think Jim Ross is I think it would be really nice for WWE to give him a send-off, have him out there calling one more show and know that it's his last show, give him the moment with the crowd and all of that. They owe him at least that, the way Vince McMahon treated him, and probably Triple H never loved him much either, but Jim Ross coming back to the WWE and just kind of being immortalized as that voice of wrestling, I would kind of like to see that as well. I can understand Jim Ross. I can understand Chris Jericho maybe wanting, as their careers and lives wind up, finishing up with WWE. So if Jim Ross does find himself back in WWE, I think it would just be for some sort of a send-off, or just to have him there maybe under a Legends deal, make some appearances here or there for nostalgia. But in terms of him actually calling shows, we know that he's not the Jim Ross he used to be. He really struggles, and I don't want to see him hanging around so long that it turns the fans off on him. I think one more little final send-off or WrestleMania main event to call would be a lot of fun for Jim Ross. And, if Jim Ross is finished up with AEW, let's say next month, he could come in and call John Cena's last match. You never know. So we'll keep our eye on the Jim Ross situation, but there are some rumblings about that. How about Mercedes Moné She picked up title number 9 on Friday night at Rev Pro's 13-year anniversary show. This is a 2-night event. Night 2 is tonight, actually, or it might have already happened. But night 1 was on Friday night. It was Global Wars UK. And Mercedes defeated Emerson Jane to win the Discovery Wrestling Scottish Women's Championship. So it's a 13-year anniversary of Rev Pro Wrestling. And it's also, she won that belt, that 9th belt, she won that on the 10-year anniversary of her TakeOver Brooklyn match with Bayley. And there was a lot of references to that match the other day. Bayley and Sasha even did a FaceTime or something. Bayley's going to some show to watch Chris Statlander wrestle. Man, I kind of want Bayley in AEW now, don't you? Holy shit. But it seems like Bayley might be starting this new gimmick in WWE, but man, it kind of makes you want that, you know? So Mercedes picks up title number 9. I think we figured it out around title number 7 that the plan probably was for her to pick up 10 titles. Mercedes, 10 belts. So she's going to get one more, and then she's going to take her big photo op, you know, with all 10 of her belts, and then they can work on starting to undo some of that. And I know a lot of fans think that she should return to all of these promotions and drop these belts back, but she's not going to lose 8 matches. It's not going to happen. She's not going to go on an 8-match losing streak, an 8-match world tour losing streak to people that aren't even under contract to Tony Khan's company. He's not going to send his champion out through the world to lose 8 times in a row. And a lot of fans are thinking, oh, she's got to go back and put those people over and give the company some recognition. She gave them recognition by being there and winning the title. So I think maybe she can drop 1 or 2 of them, sure. But this idea that she's going to go around to all these promotions and drop all these titles, I'll believe that when I see it. So the fans that think that's what they should do, I don't know what the fuck you're watching, man, what universe you're living in. Does that sound realistic to you at all? No. So maybe it is. If it is, I will be very shocked. If Mercedes goes back and gives it all back, individually, one at a time, I will be the first one to say, wow, look at there, I was wrong. Did not think it would be that way. But I have my doubts. Again, you know, Mercedes has her Hades, Mercedes has her Hades. Mercedes haters out there. There's a bunch of them, and they're all boys. There's no women. It's no women. You know, it's no well-adjusted adults. It's all anger boys. They get madder and madder. And here they were on Friday just trying to go about the routine of being the most unlikable douche possible. And then Mercedes Creative Control Hogan shows up and wins her 9th title and completely ruins their Friday night. But luckily, they didn't have any plans anyway, so what's the harm? Anyway, congrats to Mercedes Monae on her 9th championship. And she's going to break fucking Ultimo Dragon's record. Here's something fun. Danhausen could be finishing up with AEW at some point, and there could be a WWE possibility for him. Now, he reunited with CM Punk during SummerSlam weekend in New Jersey. Big fan convention there, and Danhausen met up with Punk in a hotel room where he gave him a shirt. I know I don't have the shirt shown here on the screen, but the shirt is just caricatures or just drawings of 2 Danhausens along with Bret Hart and AJ Lee. So it's the 4 of them on a shirt, and Punk got a huge kick out of that. So watching Danhausen reunite with Pepsi Phil was really fun. It was also cool to see Danhausen, who did it. This was all released on his vlog, by the way, on his channel, on his YouTube channel, his Vloghausen. In addition to the CM Punk t-shirt gift, he also wanted to hire the APA, Ron Simmons and Bradshaw, who were there, or JBL and Ron Simmons, who were there. The APA, also known as the Ass Pounding Agency. He wants to hire the Ass Pounding Agency to help him take care of the Ass Boys. So that was funny. And he also had a little interaction with Shotzi where he is threatening to sue her. So Danhausen had a really fun vlog. He's a new father, by the way, so he's got a Sonhausen or a Daughterhausen. I don't know if it's a boy or a girl. Congrats to him and his family. We love Danhausen here, and you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if he came to WWE. I was worried that this popularity would cool off because AEW has not used him at all in a long time, and he kind of did stick up. He during the Brawl Out stuff and the whole Punk drama, Danhausen did make it known kind of whose side he was on there. So Tony Khan probably just feels like I got no more use for this guy, so I'm just not going to use him. Hopefully, we won't have any more contract issues or time added or anything like that. And I could see Danhausen, because of some of the friends he has, like Pepsi Phil, putting in a good word for him and WWE giving him a shot. He's one of those guys like a Joe Hendry or one of these weird characters that just kind of gets over. And AEW, he was moving merch. He was getting huge crowd reactions, and then they just stopped using him. I know he got hurt, but I think he's been cleared. So I don't know what the deal is. Here's what Fightful Select had to say about Danhausen. Danhausen still has a Dealhausen. Fightful had reported earlier this year that Danhausen was in his contract year, and that specifically his deal would be up in July. Now that time has come and passed, and he's still listed on the AEW roster page, there's for good reason he's still with AEW Wrestling, or that's for good reason he's still with AEW Wrestling. We're told by AEW sources that Danhausen's contract would have been up on July 1st. However, there were months added to his contract. There were months added to his contract that take the contract well into 2026. It was believed that Danhausen had requested they not pick up the option and that he was ready to leave the company after barely being used the last couple of years. There have been no creative plans for Danhausen as of late. So this is a good example of what I've said before about each situation is different. There are going to be some instances where WWE or AEW adds time to a contract or whatever, and you can kind of understand it. Like, look, every situation is different. For the most part, I believe you should let anybody go who wants to go because no one person is going to make or break either company. We've seen that, Cody and Punk and Jade Cargill. Everybody left AEW. AEW's fine. And WWE can lose anybody. They've lost them before. They're going to be fine. Everybody's going to be fine. WWE could lose Roman Reigns tomorrow and they would still keep on a ticking. Everything would be moving fine. They would still be selling the same amount of tickets, moving the same amount of revenue. Like, they would just be crushing it. There's no one man that can take down a company. And when it comes to a situation like Danhausen, this is like, what is Tony Khan doing? Why are you wasting your money? Why are you adding time to his contract? I understand WWE, they are this counter programming bullshit, that they're doing. I understand Tony Khan would not want to do any favors for them. And WWE has had a long history. So for all of you fans who want to jump up the ass of Tony Khan, WWE's had a long history of just keeping people around just so they won't go sign somewhere else. That's why they started going into signing all those people a few years back before the pandemic hit to try to choke out the free agents for AEW to use. And they were signing these huge deals just to keep people around. And I swear they were signing people just to sign them. They were throwing money away. And Tony Khan, I feel like he's doing the same thing here. Like, why? What's the point of adding time to Danhausen's contract if you never plan on bringing him back to TV? That's kind of cruel. To keep him doing nothing until the beginning of the year, until the middle of next year. Now, granted, he'll be paid for all of this, but that's just a huge waste of money. What the fuck does Danhausen matter to your bottom line in AEW? Just let him go. Let him go to WWE. Let him dance around NXT and act crazy. It's not going to do anything to you. It's not going to harm you. And I say the same shit to WWE when they would do stuff like this. I'm like, just let Luke Harper go. What is the difference? Why are you holding this man hostage? He hates your guts. He doesn't want to be there. He wants to get the fuck out. He's not going to be a needle mover or a game changer for either company. He did great things in AEW. He was a lot of fun there prior to his death. I loved Brody Lee in AEW. He was tremendous. But without Brody Lee or without Luke Harper, WWE or AEW would be just fine. They would be just fine. So when WWE was like keeping him around and jerking him around like that, it's the same thing. Like, what are you doing? Why do you need to do that? What's the point? You can live without him, and the same goes for Danhausen here. Tony Khan's got no reason to like hang on to him if you're not going to use him. If you got a whole bunch of creative plans for Danhausen, then great. Throw him out there on TV and let's start doing it. But if you don't, and you're just adding time to his contract and you're willingly paying him just so he won't show up in WWE, what's going to happen if he shows up in WWE? This company has survived the losses of Cody and Punk and Jade Cargill. Some of these situations were very dramatic on their way out. And AEW weathered the storm, and they're still doing just fine. They had a rough patch there for a year or so, but a lot of people feel like their product is pretty on point right now. I don't think it's perfect, but it's better maybe than it was. What's Danhausen going to do at all? Just let him go. Save your money. Put it towards somebody else. Just silly. It's just silly. So anyway, all the best to Danhausen. We love him here, and I kind of do hope that he turns up in WWE to do some funny shit there. He doesn't have to win any championships or nothing, but I don't know, Danhausen dancing around the ring with R-Truth might be kind of fun. BTE is back on YouTube. First video in, over a year, maybe 2 years? Matt and Nick Jackson are up on YouTube right now. You can go check that out, and they are basically just trying to figure out a new name for their finisher, and it's only like a 2-minute video, but I always enjoyed being the Elite, and it does look like it might be making a little bit of a comeback, so go check out that video if you have not seen it. Also, we had a Vince McMahon sighting. I guess this was today or yesterday or whenever it was. It was all over social media today, but he was spotted in New York City having lunch, and people filmed him coming out of the restaurant. He came out first with some guy, got into a car, and then following behind him was Bruce Pritchard, JBL, and Jerry Briscoe. So, longtime confidants of Vince McMahon, especially Bruce and Jerry. JBL's always been a pal of Vince McMahon. Bruce, we always knew, we know Bruce is, always going to be in contact with Vince McMahon. And there's a lot of people in the company that still look at him as their boss and have that relationship with him. And a lot of people are looking at this instance of more evidence that Vince McMahon is going to come back to WWE one day. I don't think he's going to be back in WWE like in WWE. They might bring him out to wave at some point once he finally settles that lawsuit and that's all over with. And if he's still alive, they might put him in the Hall of Fame or bring him out there or something. But I don't think Vince McMahon is going to be pulling up a seat in Gorilla next to Triple H and getting all in the weeds there. I just don't see that a possibility anymore. But fans are saying, oh, they're in bed with with MAGA and this and that. Yeah, they are. They fucking suck. But I think Vince McMahon would create problems on the creative side of things. He's not going to do anything to benefit that at all. So Vince McMahon making an appearance, sure. Some people the tinfoil hat wearers still think Vince is in charge and he's just running things from the sidelines. Sometimes when you watch a WWE segment, that tracks. But I just don't believe it. But anyway, Vince was out and about and spotted with some of his old friends for lunch. Like I said, don't forget, Raw this Monday is in Birmingham in the UK, and it's going to be airing at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific here on the West Coast. And Monday is where we're going to learn what the fate of the Women's World Championship is. Of course, on Monday night, we are here to do a review of Naomi's pregnancy announcement, where she stayed in character. I fucking love that whole piece of business there. Loved that so much. And she vowed to come for that title the minute that baby slides out of her. So they are going to announce what they're going to do on Monday. But I believe it's pretty simple. I believe what's going to happen is that at Clash in Paris, you're going to do Stephanie Vicaire, who already has a guaranteed title shot at that event, taking on Io Sky and Rhea Ripley in a triple threat for the vacant women's championship. That's what I feel is going to happen on Monday. We will see if that comes to fruition. And like I've mentioned several times, the order in which I would do things is I would have Io Sky win back the title in Paris. It's too early for Stephanie. Shut up. I would have Io Sky win the title in Paris. Then I would have Rhea Ripley beat Io Sky for the title in Perth at Crown Jewel in October, and she can kind of kill two birds with one stone. She can, number one, win her championship back, and she could also finally get that victory over Io Sky. Now Ripley is the champion, and she takes that title into WrestleMania to face the winner of the Rumble or the Chamber, which I believe will be Stephanie Vicaire. And Stephanie Vicaire wins the title at WrestleMania. Stephanie and Ripley, one-on-one. That's the match you do. Let's hope so. But as we've seen with WWE's creative process and that stupid fucking whiteboard, they don't even know what they're going to do until 3 weeks before WrestleMania. So it's silly to start booking shit now. But that's the way I would like to see it go. Doesn't mean it's going to go that way. It's the way I would like to see it go. So Raw on Monday, like I said, we'll wait and see how the show is, and I'll determine at that point if I'm going to come up and give you guys a quick review on it. If the show sucks, I ain't going to bother. Let's talk about last night's SmackDown. Speaking of shows that suck, it didn't completely suck because we had at least one match on the show that I did like. Also, a tremendous in-ring promo between John Cena and Logan Paul, and the crowd was tremendous for all of this. So those were the positives. You know, they were in Dublin, Ireland last night for a SmackDown. The crowd was just so hot for everything, and that's awesome to see. But the way the show was booked and structured, it's very, very formulaic and just typical shit here. So they had Becky Lynch open up the show last night because she's in Ireland. Of course, she's on Raw, or she's from Ireland, but she's on Raw as the Women's Intercontinental Champion. So they had to get her on the show. So she comes out and immediately starts healing on her homeland there and starts giving all on the Dublin crowd, which I loved. And then it reminded me of when Jericho, like the first time he cut a promo when he was in Canada, and he started like suckering the fans in of talking so great about Canada, and then at the very end he said, "And I'm glad I moved to the United States because Canada sucks." And the reaction he got, I forgot where he was. It was Toronto. I think it was Toronto. I don't think it was his hometown in Winnipeg. I forgot what city that was in. It was on Nitro, and I'm pretty sure it was Toronto, but it was so good, and it kind of reminded me of that. So the crowd immediately started shitting on her, going nuts. Tiffany Stratton then comes out doing some not a cosplay, but her gear is inspired by Alicia Silverstone in Clueless, the Cher, the little outfit that she wore. And that movie came out the year I graduated high school, and Alicia Silverstone was my crush. She was in those Aerosmith videos, a couple of them. I think she was in Crying, and then she was in Amazing alongside Liv Tyler, Steven Tyler's daughter. And I always thought she was so hot, Alicia, in those videos. And then in the Clueless movie, she was like my crush when I was 18 years old. So it was kind of cool to see Tiffany come out dressed like that. But you could see where this was going. She was out, and then out comes Nia Jax. And Nia Jax gets in the ring. Nia Jax and Becky have that interesting history. And Nia attacks Tiffany. That brings out Jade Cargill, who runs off Nia Jax. You can see where all this is going. As Nia runs away, Jade kind of faces off with Becky Lynch. And then out comes Nick Aldis to announce, of course, we're going to be having a tag team match. And that would be in the main event. Now, the match did not go very long last night, probably because Cena and Logan Paul talked for so long. But Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton did defeat Nia Jax and Becky Lynch in the main event. Becky just left Nia Jax high and dry, allowing Tiffany to hit the prettiest moonsault ever, and then Jade to follow up with a splash from the top rope for the win. And Jade and Tiffany got the win in the main event, but it was a really fast and quick match, and I feel like they were probably running short on time. So we had a couple of tag matches. They're doing this number one contenders tournament thing. It feels like Dynamite and SmackDown are both doing this. So Mello and Miz, who are having some problems, they did defeat the Motor City Machine Guns last night, and they are going to go on next week to face the Street Profits, who defeated Tongaloa and JC Mateo to advance. So it's going to be Mello and Miz versus the Street Profits next week in a number one contenders match. You can kind of tell where this is going. It's got to be Mello. It's got to be the Street Profits winning and Mello and Miz finally imploding there. That's what I'm guessing is going to happen there. So we'll get Mello and Miz versus Streets next week. We were also supposed to get Aleister Black taking on R-Truth. But R-Truth showed up on the Tron and informed the fans that he had some bad news. And that was he wasn't going to be able to compete tonight because he flew to Dublin, Georgia, not Dublin, Ireland. Which isn't Truth from like Atlanta? Do you really need to drive? How far is Dublin from Atlanta? Wouldn't you just drive that? Would you really fly? No, Truth is from North Carolina. I'm sorry. Yeah, so he might fly. So he flew to Dublin, Georgia, instead of Dublin, Ireland. But he says that he's got a friend that's going to come take his place, and then out comes Damian Priest. He starts brawling with Black. Officials come out to separate them, and of course, we've got a collision coming with those two. I don't know if they're going to add that to Clash in Paris or what, but that's going to be a match we're going to get here soon. But R-Truth, don't you wish you could just uncut a braid? Like, what was the point of all that? I guess he's supposed to have a split personality, but I feel like they just dropped the entire R-Truth thing once the John Cena heel turn was over. R-Truth is right back to being who he was before, which we all did love, but a lot of fans were kind of excited about R-Truth, this new no-nonsense type of character from him. And now he's right back to being that goofy-ass R-Truth again, which you can tell WWE never wanted to bring him back. They had to due to the backlash. So now they're going to pay him and just have him do occasional random things like that, but nothing of substance until this contract that he signed runs up, and then he'll be gone permanently. That's the way I see that going. A little bit silly there that Truth just seems to be back to his old ways, but whatever. Hey, at least he's still working there because he never should have been released to begin with. Here's a match I liked. Piper Niven defeating Charlotte Flair. It's amazing how quickly, I've kind of gotten over. I really jumped on the Charlotte hate bandwagon there at the end. She was just so annoying to watch, to listen to deal with as a wrestling fan. Just such a turnoff. She's just a channel changer, man. And I just always felt like she needed a better way to connect with the fans. She never has been able to do that. Her character's been the exact same. Heel, babyface, everything she says is the same. It never changes. Same tone, same attitude, same cadence, same look, same everything. Babyface or heel Charlotte, you cannot tell the difference between those women. There isn't one. And I've always felt like she needed a little partner, someone to play off of, or, a storyline, somebody that can, bring out sides of her personality and whatnot, different sides of her personality. And I feel like she might have found that in Alexa Bliss, and them playing off each other has been fun to watch. And now, here she is in the ring, one-on-one with Piper Niven. She puts Piper Niven in a figure 8, and both members of the Secret Service are out there, and Chelsea Green slides in and gouges the eyes out of Charlotte when she's executing the figure 8, allowing Piper Niven to beat her. I think hit her with a splash and pinned her, and Piper with a big, big win over Charlotte Flair. I really liked that. I really liked watching a Flair versus Piper match. Kind of cool on SmackDown last night. So that was one positive, that Charlotte took a loss. As Tito lays down. How you doing, buddy? He's hot. It's a hot day today. He's laying down on the cool surface. So Piper with the win over Flair. I like to say that sentence. It's fun. Drew McIntyre was out for a promo as well last night. He's really pissed that there's no medical update on Cody. Sounds like, they're going to book this match for Clash in Paris, but they better do that soon. I kind of thought they would save this one for the Wrestlepalooza, because Brock and Cena, that's going to be your main event, but you still have to have another card under there. And I felt like Drew versus Cody might be better suited for Wrestlepalooza than for Clash in Paris. But they might still be setting that up. Drew was out there bitching about stuff. And he is such a great camera work here. Drew is in the ring. He's facing the hard cam perfectly. And you can hear the crowd reacting, so somebody's running in. And from behind McIntyre's shoulder, Orton just pops up out of nowhere, hits McIntyre with an RKO. So what I think they should do is do Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton at Clash in Paris, and then save Drew McIntyre and Cody for Wrestlepalooza. That's what I would do. But we will find out. Cody will probably be on the show next week, but shit, we don't know. He's taking a little break right now. Good for him. And finally, last night on SmackDown, we had the tremendous face-off in-ring promo between John Cena and Logan Paul. And I got to say, John Cena did a really good job of putting over Logan while also burying him at the same time. Cena referenced and acknowledged Logan's athletic ability, calls him a future Mania main eventer one day. But once he said all the nice stuff, he went on to insult Logan Paul, who he was, went on the outside of the ring and kicked over the Prime water display, which I loved, and says that Logan Paul used the WWE for another branding opportunity so he could buy more Pokemon cards. And he said that Logan Paul has only worked 23 matches and he's worked 23 years, even fought Sheamus right here in Dublin with no fucking cameras, and talked about the differences in their legacies. And he says that Logan Paul being here, having this match with him, is sucking opportunities away from Dominic Mysterio, AJ Styles, Jacob Fatu, Seth Rollins, the Usos, all these people that he apparently wants to work with, but he only has 10 dates left. So he really did a good job of just destroying Logan Paul. And when you hear, it's fine speech John Cena, because Logan Paul got to say his piece first. And he mentioned something about I did like how Logan mentioned that he's not going to sign a cohabitation agreement with John Cena. I never watched, I don't know if was it Total Bellas or Total Divas? Whatever the show that John Cena was on, where he was a fucking psycho about his house and the rules in his house. Like every clip I saw of him, I'm like, that guy is a monster. He's an absolute monster. So that was our first look at heel John Cena, was right there. was the tidbits that I saw on Twitter and social media, because I never watched Total Bellas or Total Divas. I'm not Total Bellas or Total Divas audience, but the little bit that I did see, Cena sounded and looked like a fucking sociopath. So I did like that Logan Paul brought that up. Cena mentioned that he was kicking ass winning championships, that Logan was making vines with his brother and all this stuff. It was tremendous. In the end, Logan Paul tries to attack Cena. Cena gets the better of him, hits him with an AA, and leaves him laying. And that was a really, really awesome promo by John Cena. And it really kind of bums you out that they turned him heel, because I wish we could get those 5 months back of that just robotic bullshit from John Cena. If the heel turn would have went well, then great, then no problem. But man, it was like dead in the water ever since WrestleMania, and ever since The Rock, ceased to be a part of this after he was such a big part of the heel turn, and WWE basically abandoning ship and aborting the whole fucking concept right here at the end. And now John Cena only has 10 dates left, and we could have been getting these promos for months instead of what we got. And that really sucks that his final year is going to have this stigma attached to it. So anyway, this was all earlier in the show. So you fast forward to the end of the show, after the, the women's main event, there's a backstage segment where Cena's like leaving the arena, and he's approached by Nick Aldis, who says, "Hey, I just got off the phone with Brock Lesnar. So there's your seed planted for Wrestlepalooza." As soon as Nick Aldis says that, Logan Paul comes in with a punch and lays out John Cena. And what was funny is, I guess what happened is that, because when you watch that punch, he missed John Cena by 6 or 7 inches, came nowhere close to his jaw at all. And I guess what happened is the Dublin crowd and the people watching in Dublin got to see that live. But for the tape delay here in the States on the USA Network or whatever, they reshot it. They filmed another angle of it, where Aldis came out and said, he didn't say he just got off the phone with Brock. He said, "I just talked to Brock." And then Logan came in from a different angle to deliver the punch so you wouldn't see how badly it missed. So it sounds like the live watchers in Dublin, or if you're watching on a VPN or whatever here in the States, you got to see the shitty one. And then on the tape delay, they probably fixed it on the YouTube channel as well. So I did find that funny. And then Logan Paul runs off and says, "I'll see you in Paris." So here's what we got for Clash in Paris so far. John Cena versus Logan Paul. I believe John Cena will absolutely win that match. You better. Seth Rollins, of course, defending his title in that 4-way versus Jey Uso, CM Punk, and Los Angeles Knight. We also have Roman Reigns taking on Bronson Reed. And as announced last week on Raw, Sheamus and Rusev in a good old-fashioned Donnybrook. And we're also going to have the Women's World Championship match on there as well, which I believe will be a triple threat for the vacant title. They could chuck Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre on there as well, or maybe even Drew and Cody if there's time. I don't know. So it's looking right now, we got 5 matches for sure. We might get a 6th for Clash in Paris. All right. That leaves us with AEW stuff now, because we got to get into what's going to be happening at Forbidden Door, and I want to run through a couple of tidbits from Dynamite this past week, including some news on Will Ospreay, and that could be some sad news here, guys. There's a really good chance we're going to lose Will Ospreay, who's currently, at least inside the ropes, my favorite pro wrestler in the world right now. He is going to be gone for probably a year. He's going to need some very, very major neck surgery. Here's what Fightful Select had to say about this in an update yesterday. Fightful Select spoke to sources that said they were actually hopeful that Ospreay wouldn't wind up wrestling at Forbidden Door. With his neck injury, he was told by his surgeon that it needs to be taken care of, but that it wasn't getting any worse, per SI. Ospreay didn't outright say he would be getting surgery, but implied it. Even people on the roster we spoke to didn't say that they've outright been told that he's getting surgery, but that they don't expect him to be around for a while after Forbidden Door. Ospreay had made it very clear to people in the company that working Forbidden Door was very important to him. Ospreay went into AEW all in, knowing that he was going to need some time off, which drastically changed the tentative plans following the show. AEW wasn't quite sure how long they would need Ospreay to be out, as he had not started his rehab until after the All In event. Ospreay's speech on the episode of Dynamite that aired after All In even came together last minute. Originally, he wasn't going to cut a promo revealing his injury, but he was asked as there were a number of wrestlers not cleared and changes made to the show. Contrary to the line on Dynamite, Ospreay actually is cleared to compete in the match. So Ospreay is cleared, but he's clearly going to be needing some time off after this, and surgery is kind of still up in the air. So Ospreay is injured, and he was also on Dynamite this past Wednesday as well, where he cut the promo in the beginning of the show. And that's where he said he wasn't cleared for Forbidden Door, but that's just storyline. He is cleared. The doctors say his neck can't get any worse. So, the same thing goes with Cody's torn pec. Can't get any worse. Go out there and wrestle with it, but then you're going to have it taken care of after that. It's the same type of situation here, it sounds like. So, Ospreay says that he wasn't cleared for Forbidden Door, but he's going to be doing it anyway for revenge. He wants a piece of Jon Moxley, and all of this opened up Dynamite. Dynamite was really kind of an interesting show because we had a big return on the show as well that we'll talk about in just a second. So Ospreay was out there for his promo first, and he said all that piece. Then we go into a tag team match between Tanahashi and Jet Speed taking on the Death Riders. So during the match, I guess backstage, Will Ospreay kidnaps Marina Shafir. And during the tag match, he drags out a body bag, and the Death Riders assume that Marina Shafir is in the body bag. So this is enough of a distraction for the Death Riders that Tanahashi is able to climb the top rope, execute a top rope splash onto Wheeler Yuta, and get the win for the babyfaces in the tag match to open the show. The Bucks show up on the stage to attack Will Ospreay and rescue Marina, but when they open up the bag, it's Darby Allin, so there's this big fun fucking brawl, and of course this is all leading up to the big 10-man lights-out cage match at Forbidden Door, and I feel like Ospreay is going to be able to be protected here. There's 10 men in this thing, and I don't think it's a cage where the cage is going to be around the perimeter of the ring. It might be, but I think this is a regular-ass cage. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. So a regular cage match with 10 individuals inside of it. Ospreay should be able to remain pretty protected, and everybody's going to bleed there. So, if this is going to be it for Ospreay, I don't know if they're going to try to do an injury angle, but you don't really need to. You don't need to injure Ospreay in the match to knock him out because he's already kind of been open about him needing to be taking time off anyway. So I don't even know if you really need to do something in the match to Ospreay to explain his time off because I feel like it's already been explained. So we'll see. Also on Dynamite, we saw the return of that guy right there on your screen, Luchasaurus. He showed up in the middle of a Christian and Adam Copeland promo where Copeland was talking about Christian and calls Christian he's my asshole. And then he kind of thinks about how weird that sounded. And I do like that. I like that they're kind of keeping Christian kind of a little bit of an asshole because he deserves his comeuppance for what he did and how he treated the patriarchy and whatnot. And now, unfortunately, the match that Cope and Christian are already booked for Forbidden Door against Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne has been changed because Nick Wayne appears on the Tron during the in-ring segment and informs Copeland and Christian that he's injured and he won't be able to make the match. Apparently, it's a legit injury and it's a broken foot. So there are so many champions in Ring of Honor right now who are injured. Nick Wayne for sure, and Dustin Rhodes never dropped in either of those tag team titles, did he? I think he's co-holder of the tags and co-holder of the trios. And he just had reconstructive knee surgery. So when the hell is Dustin ever going to come back? Now you got Nick Wayne. He's out as well. And he said, never fear, because he has found a suitable replacement. And then it cuts to a video on the Tron of basically Luchasaurus like waking up from his Frankenstein coma or whatever, sits right up in the bed. Crowd reacts huge. Luchasaurus comes out and kind of has this face-to-face. It's kill switch in Christian face-to-face, winds up choke slamming Christian, and it's really hard to tell here who's the baby faces and who's the heels. I mean, Lucha is coming back as a heel here, but Christian was so abusive towards the Patriarchy members, and also Luchasaurus coming back from a very, very scary illness. It was touch and go for a while there with his health. It was starting to remind us a little bit of Brody Lee, and the fact that he was able to get healthy again, and he has been cleared for a while. They just haven't had a reason to bring him back yet. Finally, he's back here, and I think the match is going to be kind of interesting at Forbidden Door. We'll be predicting that in just a second. We had this great tag team match. Definitely the highlight of the show was this wonderful tag team, this newly formed, thrown together tag team by the name of Brodito. It's Brody King and Bandito. They are fantastic. I love them together. So they're facing FTR in the finals of this number one contenders eliminator tournament thing that they've been spending so much time on, and we didn't get a winner in the tournament. Can you believe that shit? The match, however, was awesome. The match between Brodito and FTR was so much fun, even though you kind of knew they were going to do a time limit draw because they kept mentioning the time. The only thing that was weird is that when it got down to the final, like 30 seconds or 60 seconds, FTR's like setting up a table or some shit. And the whole match ends with, I think, Wheeler doing a tope suicida, like through the table or something, like rough, gnarly landing. And then the bell rings and it's over. It's a time limit draw. And then right there on the spot, Tony Khan makes it official for Forbidden Door that it's now going to be a three-way. It's going to be the Hurt Syndicate defending against FTR and Brodito. And my first thought was that, holy shit, it's because of this MVP shit. And apparently MVP has been very vocal about who the Hurt Syndicate will and will not lose to and all this shit backstage. And now when you see that, bro, they've made this a triple threat, my first thought was like, oh my God, are they doing this so Hurt Syndicate doesn't have to take the pin? But then you find out, at least according to AEW's social media, that this is an elimination match. Now on the match graphic, which I'll show you later during predictions, actually I have it right here. Where is it? This match graphic doesn't say elimination, but it is, according to AEW social media. This is an elimination match. So that kind of changes things. You know, so if it's an elimination match, Hurt Syndicate, in order to lose the belts, are going to have to take the pin anyway. So what was the point of making it a triple threat? Are they just trying to add enough pieces to this to where it, you know, protects the Hurt Syndicate or whatever? Because if this was not an elimination match and FTR wins the titles by pinning Brody King, then that's going to tell me that MVP, that Tony Khan actually allowed that to happen. You can't be doing that. If you need somebody to go over, they got to go over. I know sometimes you can debate and push back on things and fight for things, but we could tell from weeks back that the plan is probably to do FTR and Cope and Christian for the tag team titles. And if Hurt Syndicate or MVP or anybody like that is standing in the way of this, and now Tony Khan has to book around that, that is not a good look for him or his company. You know, he's got to be, he's the booker. He's the guy in charge. What I say is what you go out there and do. That's what I fucking pay you for. So again, this is all speculation. We don't know, but based on all those like backstage reports we've been hearing and stuff, I'm like, man, are they doing all of this just to try to appease MVP so they can get those damn titles off of the Hurt Syndicate in a way that will be acceptable to MVP? It feels like that might be what we're doing here. And what happens if Brodito wins the championships? What if Brodito pulls off the upset of all upsets and wins the championships tomorrow at Forbidden Door, and then immediately on television right after that, you have FTR beat them for the belts to go into All Out to face Cope and Christian in Toronto? That would tell me that MVP, you know, was able to politic his way out of losing to specific people. And that's not the message you want to set. That's not the example you want to set for your talent. You know, Tony Khan, he's not new at this anymore. He's been 6 years of being the head booker here. He's had to make some very difficult decisions already in his life. He's pull up your big boy pants. I think he has. I think he's dealt with a lot of big boy situations already since being in that company. The biggest one, CM Punk, and having to make a big decision to fire his favorite wrestler. Imagine if I started a wrestling company and brought in Bret Hart, and then he got in a fight with all my roster members, and I had to fire him. Like, I have no choice. I got to fire you, man. It sucks. Breaks my heart. No pun intended, but it's what you got to do. So I would really hate to think that MVP could bully Tony Khan into just doing something like this and going so far out of your way, going twists and turns to really go a really short distance would be disappointing if that's the way it turned out. So I'll let you guys know what my prediction is for that match in just a minute. And also on Dynamite, we had a big update on the main event, or what should be the main event, between MJF and Hangman Page. Now, Hangman Page goaded MJF into cashing in his contract last week, but then this past Dynamite, they did a really dumb segment. WWE's done these a few times as well. A lot of times, actually. They've ended I Quit matches this way. There's been lots of instances where there's been a situation in wrestling where a heel has got a helpless babyface and he's ready to murder him and says, look, I won't murder your friend unless you agree to these terms. And then that's what I think the Nation threatened to decapitate China unless Triple H gave up in the I Quit match to The Rock, and he did, and then China turned on him. So MJF is backstage. He's got Ricochet and I think Gates of Agony are there, and they've got Mark Briscoe held hostage. And I don't know if they've covered him in gasoline or whatever, but MJF says, I'm going to light your friend on fire unless you agree to 3 stipulations for the title match. Number 1, if you get disqualified, I win the championship. Number 2, if you get counted out, I win the championship. And number 3, I don't have to cash in my contract to get this match. I get it, and I retain the contract. And you've got to the count of 5, like he's a fucking child, like he's in 3rd grade. You got to the count of 5 to agree. 1, 2, and then Hangman's like, okay, I agree, let's do it. And he has to agree to all this bullshit. And then later on, he goes back there looking for Max. He jacks Ricochet up against the wall, which is pretty funny. But I'm just not a fan of those angles. It's nothing on AEW because, this is just something they've borrowed from somewhere else. But I know we've seen several instances of this in wrestling. We've seen it in WWE, and it's no better there than it is in AEW, and it's just dumb all around because that's attempted murder. Like, what was going to happen if Hangman said, no, Max, I don't agree to your terms? Then Max burns fucking Mark Briscoe, and he, Ricochet, and Gates of Agony go to prison for life. Because they're going to be charged with murder too. They were holding him down while MJF lit the match. So they're all going to be charged with murder. All of them. Now granted, you have to sacrifice your friend. Hangman Page could be like, well, if you burn him, you ain't going to be going to Forbidden Door anyway. I would have just at least said that back to him on the mic and say, have you thought this through, Maxwell Jacob Friedman? Do you know what you're saying here? If I was Hangman, I would have sat up on the, how Shawn and Eddie would sit up on the corner and put their legs up and cross their legs on the turnbuckle? I'd sit up like that and go ahead, light him. Light them. Like, what's going to happen if you do that, right? The police is going to come and arrest your asses and take you to the clink, and you ain't going to make it to Forbidden. You certainly can't travel overseas. Well, they were already overseas, weren't they? Shit, they're in Scotland. Fuck, maybe murder's legal in Scotland. I don't know. It might be. Murder might be legal in Scotland. So this whole thing might have been actually a very genius plan on the behalf of MJF. But you're over. Now you're going to be locked up abroad. You're going to be locked up abroad, and that ain't no fun either. I don't think Scottish prisons are that dangerous, but they might be. Just be happy you're not in Mexico. So threatening murder was just silly, and then Hangman agreeing to it. I just didn't like any of that. But now Max goes into that match tomorrow with all these stipulations in his favor. So we're going to predict that in 1 second. But before we do, I do want to mention Collision real quick because we have a nice debut tonight on Collision. So if you watch Collision, that goes live here in just a little bit. Sorry, I had to squeeze the match graphic in here, but check this out. We got Young Bucks versus the Paragon, Takeshita versus Tomohiro Ishii. This is going to be a Wrestle Dynasty rematch. We got Sky Blue and Julia Hart taking on Queen Aminata and Willow Nightingale. We got Hiromu Takahashi and Sky Flight versus the Don Callis family. We got the Gates of Agony versus the Grizzleds, who I love. And we also have Big Bill in action and the first international Max Caster Open Challenge. But the one match that sticks out there is Megan Bayne taking on Isla Dawn. Isla Dawn did make her debut on Collision. It was taped same night is a Dynamite, I believe. And Isla Dawn is going to be taking on Megan Bayne, and I'm so happy Isla Dawn is there. I always liked her. I thought she had a lot of talent, and I'm really happy that she gets to be Isla Dawn. I don't think that was the name she was using prior to WWE. I think that's her WWE name. So the fact that she was able to use this is great. It's the same thing with Indy Hartwell. Indy Hartwell was given her name, and she mentioned in a podcast, I don't know if it was Chris or who it was she was talking to, and she said, yeah, I just asked WWE if I could have my name, and they're like, yeah, sure. So maybe Isla Dawn did the same thing. And I think that's great. Now, Isla Dawn, you would think is just kind of like an insignificant signing, but when you really think about her, she was really good. You could see it right at the end there when they were featuring her in interviews and stuff. You can see that she has a personality to her. She's a funny person. She's a sexy person. And I could definitely see Isla Dawn filling that Mariah May void that was left when she left. She's a character that could do that stuff. I think she'd be great. I wasn't aware of Isla Dawn's game, so to speak, until I saw her on television and the way she was speaking and just kind of some aspects of her personality. I'm like, she looks like a really fun and funny person that I think could be valuable. She's not just like an idiot or stick in the mud or, a talentless, charismaless, just, empty box. She's got substance to her. And I was happy to see that. So we'll see how things pan out there, but for people, I hope Tony Khan books her right and whatever. I'm like, well, define book her right. Was she booked right in WWE? You can't just say that. I forgot who I was talking to on Twitter the other day. I hope he books her right. I'm like, well, what do you mean specifically? You can't just say that's too broad of a term. What do you mean book her correctly? What does correctly mean? What do you mean by that? Better than WWE? Because she was booked like ass there. She had that one championship win, right? When they had the tag title win in their hometown or whatever. But overall, they didn't treat her very well. And she has way more ability than the spot that she was given on that roster. So, what do you mean? Be world champion? People can never define that. It's like woke. Nobody knows what it means. Nobody can define what booking someone correctly even means. Give me examples. Give me examples of that, because worrying about Tony Khan booking her correctly, we should be happy that she's there. We don't know if she's signed yet or not. I don't know. But if she is signed, that means she's there with a job, a paying job, a high-paying job, and she's getting at least an opportunity to get over. And from there, she can let her personality shine, because I think with Isla Dawn and, the issues that AEW already has with their women's division and giving the women enough exposure and time and matches on the show and whatnot, someone like Isla Dawn is going to be able to get over with her personality before her ring work. And you got some great personalities there, the Tony Storms, and even the Mercedes. And Mariah May, like I said, was tremendous. This Blake Monroe shit, I don't even give a fuck. In my mind, Mariah May ceases to exist. Blake Monroe is a shell of what Mariah May was doing. It's so utterly boring, but it's where she wants to be. So that's important to her, then it's important to me. But there's a void now in AEW that needs to be filled with that type of character, and AEW tends to lean into the more sexual stuff more than WWE, and I think Isla Dawn would be terrific in a role like that. So check out her debut tonight on Collision. Let me know how it is. All right, let's predict it. It's time for Forbidden Door predictions. According to my count here, minus any 0 hour stuff that gets added, I have 9 matches on this show. And I guess the 0 hour is going to start at 8 a.m. in the morning for me. Fuck that. I will probably miss the first hour or so of the show and then maybe catch up with it. We'll see how it goes. But Forbidden Door tomorrow, we got 9 matches. Let's start with a championship match, a world championship match. Let's start with an IWGP World Championship match. Zack Sabre Jr. defending against Nigel McGuinness. I don't give a fuck about this match at all. Why was this not Zack Sabre Jr. versus Takeshita or something? Nigel, a commentator? I don't know what. I like Nigel. I appreciate the career that he had, but his all-in match I didn't give a fuck about, and now this one. What are we trying to tell us here? That Nigel McGuinness has a chance to win the IWGP Championship? He does not. Zack Sabre Jr. all the way over Nigel McGuinness here. I kind of hope that match opens the show because I'm cool with skipping it. Also, here's another one real easy to predict. Mercedes 9 belts She's going to be defending her TBS championship only against Alex Windsor, Persephone, and Bozilla. What a name, Bozilla from Stardom. We finally got the answer. I think Wednesday we didn't know still, and then they announced that it was going to be Bozilla, along with Persephone against Mercedes and Alex Windsor. Come on, what are we doing here? Mercedes is going to win. None of these women have a single hope in hell of beating Mercedes for that TBS championship, especially after she's already held it for so long. I think when she loses it, it needs to be in a one-on-one situation. So Mercedes, 100%, she will be retaining her TBS title tomorrow. We've got Kyle Fletcher. He's defending his TNT championship against Hiromu Takahashi. Now, again, much like the first two matches, not tough to predict this one. This is going to be a Fletcher win all the way. However, I think this is going to be a really, really good match. Zack Sabre Jr. and Nigel, if you like mat wrestling, will be pretty fun. They're going to be twisting and contorting themselves and joint manipulation and all that shit. It's going to be, very precise. Fletcher and Takahashi, I think, has a much better chance of just kind of having some excitement to it. And Fletcher is not going to be dropping the TNT title to Takahashi, although I think the match is going to be fun, and I am looking forward to that one. Here's that weird one. So it's the Hurt Syndicate versus FTR versus Bro Dito in an AEW World Tag Team Championship three-way. Now, when AEW posted this match on their social media on Twitter yesterday or whenever, the text reads that it's an elimination match, but it doesn't say so here on the graphic. But I do believe it is an elimination match, which really does change everything. Because if it wasn't an elimination match, then, okay, it's pretty simple. Bro Dito is going to take the pin here, and FTR is going to advance. But now that it's an elimination match, there's a part of me that thinks that the Hurt Syndicate could retain here. I also think that there's a possibility that the whole split between the Hurt Syndicate and MJF might be a ruse, and they might be helping each other out here. What I have always expected to happen is the Hurt Syndicate and MJF with the MJF and Hurt Syndicate situation is that MJF would ultimately cost them the tag team titles. But I don't know if that's going to be something we see here because MJF has got a bigger match of his own to worry about later on in the night. Maybe MJF's thoughts are that, hey, if I help out the Hurt Syndicate, they'll help me later against Hangman. So I really want to predict FTR to win the championships here because that's what I think should happen. It needs to be FTR going into All Out to face Cope and Christian. That's the match you do. But with everything going on behind the scenes and some of the things we've been hearing and the really weird decision to make this a three-way now, it makes you wonder if Tony Khan doesn't really have a firm grasp on some of these talents, and now he's got to figure out a diplomatic way to get the belts off the Hurt Syndicate and whatnot, which is just not what you want to be doing. So I am still going to predict FTR to win the titles here because that's what I think should happen. FTR should win the title. Hurt Syndicate does not have to lose clean. You can have all sorts of shit happen here. You can have, like I said, you can have MJF coming out to attempt to help them with the thought process being they'll help me later. He fucks up and costs him the match or something. With all these moving parts, with Bro Dito, with Bandito, with Brody King, with possible outside interference, you got Stokely out there too, don't forget, that you can set up and book this match in a way where you can take the titles off the Hurt Syndicate and they can still be somewhat protected even in a elimination scenario. Just have somebody interfere or whatever. You can pin Shelton Benjamin or whatever. It's not that big of a deal. So I feel like I'm going to predict FTR because creative-wise, that's the direction it looks like they were taking us in. Now, if we get some surprise finish here, if Bro Dito wins the championships or the Hurt Syndicate retain, that's going to me, add confirmation that there are some things going on backstage that Tony Khan is having trouble controlling. And if I'm Tony Khan and I really want this match for Toronto, I want FTR and Cope and Christian in Toronto for the championships. That's the match I want. There isn't a goddamn thing that should stop you from achieving that. Not one wrestler, not one manager, nothing. And if MVP came to me with all these complaints, I would say, MVP, what I'm going to do is FTR versus Cope and Christian for the fucking championships at All Out. That's what I'm doing. You guys are going to drop the titles. I'm sorry. If you want to be butthurt about it, then fine. We can overbook the fuck out of the match and make sure that your boys are protected, if that'll make you happy. But the match at All Out is fucking happening. Why is it happening? Because I'm the goddamn boss. That's why. Now, I'm not saying this is the situation back there, but I'm going to be disappointed if Tony Khan is bullied out of booking a match the way he wants. And that can't happen. That cannot happen. MVP, Shelton, and Lashley all seem like very reasonable men. You know, we heard the reports that MVP's rubbing people the wrong way, and you can kind of get that. People coming in from years in WWE, coming into AEW, it's a different animal, so people are going to have, you know, maybe their noses up and stuff. I can totally understand WWE guys coming in and maybe having that attitude at first, but overall, they don't seem like irrational men. These aren't things we've really heard about them before. We've never heard about Lashley or Shelton or MVP being a huge fucking pain in the ass backstage. So I have my doubts that all of this is accurate as it is. But if we get some weird finish where the Hurt Syndicate retains, or like I said, Brodito wins the titles only to then drop them to FTR the next week on TV, that's going to confirm that something fishy is going on backstage. But even with all of that, I'm still going to predict FTR to win the titles because that's what needs to happen. You know, unless Cope and Christian take a loss, which is certainly possible. Cope and Christian taking on Luchasaurus and Kip Sabian. I suppose it's possible that they could lose, you know, and maybe they have to, wait a little bit longer to get the title shot. But that title shot or the title match or the all-out match is in Toronto. I think the location is more important than the actual getting the title shot. So you want to do it there. So you don't really have time for Cope and Christian to take some losses and then build their way up to a title match. You got to give them a victory right off the bat to justify it. How are you going to justify Cope and Christian getting a title match against FTR if they lose here? You know what I mean? So I'm picking Cope and Christian to beat Luchasaurus and Kip Sabian, but it is kind of weird. I don't know if I want to see Luchasaurus or Killswitch, I guess he's still being called. I don't want to see Killswitch lose his first match back after he died almost, you know, so he probably will though. Just all you got to do is pin Kip Sabian. No big deal. And at some point when Nick Wayne is healed, you're going to have to blow off that. Christian and Nick Wayne needs to happen. You got to do that match, but that's going to be on hold now. So I'm going to predict Cope and Christian to win, but I do think there's an outside chance that Killswitch and Sabian could pull off an upset here. We will see, but I'm going with Cope and Christian in that one. Then, of course, we have our big lights-out steel cage. It's going to be Will Ospreay and his buddies, the Golden Lovers, Kenny Omega and Kota Ibushi. We've got Tanahashi also with his terrible fucking knees. My God. Oh, my God, the poor guy, poor Hiroshi. And we've got Darby Allin rounding out the five over there. And I see three people there that are really banged up. Kenny and, well, Ibushi is back, but Kenny, I kind of thought we were going to lose him again. And then, of course, Tanahashi, when you watch that man try to walk, my God, his knees are just non-existent. And, of course, they're taking on Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Gabe Kidd, and the Young Bucks. I feel like the heels should win here because you got so many people that could eat the pin. I guess if it's going to be, how does this work, lights out? Do you have to knock your person out? Do you pin them? I'm not even sure what lights out means. What's the rules in this? Is it pinfall? I don't know. So it depends on how they want to do it. Like I said earlier, Will Ospreay's already made his injury known, so we know what's wrong with him. So you don't really need to do an injury angle in this match to explain his absence when he goes to get surgery because he's already told us. So I feel like the heels have got a better chance of winning here based on who's in the match, but it's also London in Will Ospreay's hometown, and he says it's 13 minutes from his front door, and if we're going to lose him for a year, I think having a nice moment with him and his fans, getting a win, and maybe saying goodbye would be a nice way to remember him. But if he's going to be gone a year, what does he need a win for, you know? So I think it could go either way. I could see it. I can see both sides of it. I'm going to go with the baby faces. Part of me wants to go with the heels, man, because you're going to have to do Darby and Moxley, and Ospreay wants a pound of flesh from Moxley, so maybe Ospreay falls short of that goal, and then Darby takes over in the feud and works with Moxley. That's a tough one to call. I'm going to go babyfaces. I'm going to go Team Ospreay to win, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence on that. But yeah, I'm going to go with Ospreay and his boys to win that match. We'll see if they run any sort of injury angle. We'll see how much blood is spilled here. We will see who winds up taking the loss and how the match comes off with 10 people crammed into a really, really tight spot. Okay, Lights Out unsanctioned. So we're thinking Lights Out will be the main event. All right, I guess I could see that because I don't think Hangman's going to drop the title anyway. Yeah, so Lights Out cage could be the main event, and it could be the final goodbye for Will Ospreay for a year. That's a good point, We Are Pro Wrestling. So yeah, I am going to pick the babyfaces to win the Lights Out steel cage match. Kazuchika Okada is putting his unified title on the line against Swerve Strickland. I was really excited about this feud at first because I thought it was going to be a good win and a good new championship for Strickland to win, but he's battling what appears to be a legitimate knee injury, and the build to this match has not been very significant. And in the little video package on Wednesday, I don't know. I'm starting to have my doubts. And if Swerve is dealing with an injury, I don't know if they're going to want to put a new belt on him right now. Plus, Okada technically just won that. So I'm going to actually pick Okada. When this feud first kicked off, I was definitely going to pick Swerve, but I think for the purposes of this match, I'm going to pick Okada to win, but Swerve to probably still win that championship, provided that he doesn't miss any significant time with any sort of surgery either. So we'll keep our eye on Swerve's deal, and hopefully we don't lose him and Ospreay after Forbidden Door, but I think I'm going to go Okada to beat Swerve Strickland in that match. Again, not very confident in that, though. Toni Storm defending her AEW Women's Championship against Athena. I'm going Toni on this. I think Toni Storm will get the win here. I would keep her rolling. Athena got the pin on Dynamite, on the go-home show there, even though we do have Collision later on. Feels like it should be a win for Toni Storm. I don't know who's going to finally knock her off, but with Toni beating Mercedes and Athena, somebody else might come along. We will see, but I'm going to keep the title on Toni for now. I don't want to see her drop it, so I'm predicting Toni. If the Lights Out steel cage match is not the main event, this one probably will be. Hangman Page defending his AEW championship against MJF. Of course, now MJF doesn't have to cash in his contract, and if Hangman Page gets counted out or disqualified, he loses the title. I got Hangman Page winning here. I think he's going to find a way to win because it would be weird if MJF won the title, because if he does, then what's the point of the contract? The only way MJF is going to win the title is if he cashes in that contract. So I'm going to predict Hangman Page to win this championship match. That doesn't mean that right after the match, MJF can immediately cash in his contract and win the title there. There could be a second match. I don't want to predict whether or not that will or will not happen. If this match is the main event, there's a very good chance it will. But if it's middle of the show, then it's just going to be Hangman Page retaining the championship here. Either way, I've got Hangman retaining at least in this first match. And again, with the no DQ, stip or whatnot, maybe Hurt Syndicate come out there, especially if we get an MJF appearance in their match. If they're pissed off that they lost, they might show up and screw Max. But in the opening, in the first match, I just think it should just be Hangman winning, and then MJF retains that contract to maybe cash in at All Out. Maybe we get a second match. Maybe Hangman wins this one, and then MJF continues the tease, and then Hangman, talks him into cashing in the contract on September 20th and just doing it there. But I've got Hangman Page retaining over MJF, and I think if they're going to do some sort of a big double match or contract cash in or anything like that, maybe save that for All Out and maybe not do it here. And then you can do the Lights Out steel cage match in the main event with Will Ospreay getting his nice send-off from the audience before we don't see him for a year. And that sucks because a lot of us had high hopes of him main eventing All In next year in London, in Wembley, and winning the championship. But if he's going to be out for a year, how is he going to get that done? And now you got to win the Owen. You got to win the Owen to get that done, which means he's going to have to be back even earlier, which doesn't seem timeline-wise like it's a possibility if he needs surgery. Unless he feels like he could rehab this and do the surgery in 2 years after he has his little title run. I don't know. But it feels like All In next year in Wembley is in serious jeopardy for Will Ospreay. And all the best to Will Ospreay as we likely watch him wrestle for the final time tomorrow night for probably as long as a year. So, yeah, there you go. That is pretty much it for my notes. I got a few minutes here to knock out some super chats here. What did you say, Zane? Christy Hemme possibly could lose home due to a fire. That sucks. Yeah, and thank you, We Are Pro Wrestling. AEW usually does unsanctioned matches as the main event. Okay. The only problem with that is, though, I feel like that would guarantee a non-MJF title win. Now, I'm not expecting him to win anyway, but if you put MJF and Hangman earlier on in the night, I think you can guarantee that you're not going to get like that second cash in, which, like I said, I would do it all out anyway. So I wouldn't do the second cash in immediately after, at least for this match. So if that's the case and Hangman's just going to beat MJF, then yeah, you can put that in semi-main or before the final match or whatnot. So that could be true. I'm going to go get some of these super chats knocked out, although I'm going to go to my master list because I am freezing up over there. There we go. I'll knock out some of these questions, and then I got to get out of here. And then we'll be back at it again tomorrow for some reviews and watch-alongs. It's going to be fun. Where are my supers? There they are. All right, let's, okay, there's not too many. There's just two. Very easy. Ryan Adams, thanks, bud. Appreciate that $5. I got Spectrum and all the apps besides Netflix I could bundle with my cable provider like Peacock, ESPN, Disney Plus, and Paramount. Yeah, if you have, like, actual cable, like Spectrum, then yeah, you can bundle all of that stuff. And even on my DirecTV stream, it offers me the opportunity to bundle a lot of that stuff, but it doesn't offer me the ESPN one. So I'm curious how everybody is doing it. And Terry Allen Jr., you got 5 for us. Classic reviews, attempt audio with video clips from the events. Example, Armageddon review you done. Brian Zane currently does. You got to be careful with that, though, Terry Allen. You can only use 3 seconds at a time. And if anything gets matched and copyrighted, that means I have to edit it out, re-render the video, re-put it up. And I do not envy YouTubers that have to deal with that headache for so long. I'm more of a still shot kind of guy. But what I am going to be doing is putting up more reactions with the video over on Patreon, and I think I'm going to make Patreon free. I'm working on that right now as well, since so many people have been subscribing for so many years. I kind of want to make Patreon another stop where you can watch some of my content that won't be affected by copyright stuff. I can watch an entire pay-per-view, an entire match. So I'm going to be putting some reactions over there for you guys as well. So there is going to be stuff like that, but when it comes to the reviews, I will make them very easily, very enjoyable to watch. We will try to include some clips here or there, but with YouTube, you got to be careful about that. You can't lose your channel anymore for stuff like that. Like if I play a WWE clip, all that's going to happen is the video is going to get blocked, but that's still a pain in the ass. It doesn't give me a channel strike or copyright strike or anything like that, unless you just air the entire show and upload the entire pay-per-view in its entirety. But in terms of fair use, YouTube usually will get you if you're using more than 3 seconds. That's when the copyright recognition picks up. So if I'm going to use clips, it's got to be quick, or I got to put an overlay over top to where you can't see it, which I sometimes do for my YouTube shorts, which every now and then get marked for copyright. But check out my YouTube shorts. I got a few of them. You'll see how I do those. So we'll figure out how to actually produce these things when the time comes. I'm looking forward to a nice fall and winter months here on the channel. It's gonna be fun. So anyway, I think that's it for me today. I got to get the hell out of here now and go to work, and then I'm off for the next 3 days. It's gonna be really nice. Don't forget, tomorrow we will be here for our Forbidden Door review. Again, that's going to be 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That'll be our review start time tomorrow. And then we are going to take a small break and regroup at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific to watch Clash of Champions 24, the debut of the Shockmaster. And I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks again for being here today, guys. Looking forward to hanging out with you tomorrow. Going to be a big day. Lots to talk about. And we'll be back at it again. You guys enjoy the rest of your Saturday evening. Thank you so much for being here. And I'll be catching you tomorrow afternoon for Forbidden Door Review. Peace.